Much of the country was already under what they called Tier 4 restrictions, which you or I might have described as a lockdown anyway. But yesterday, Boris Johnson, the Prime Minister, did indeed put the entire country on full lockdown. And in fact, this is because the statistics showing the rate of increase in infections and the number of deaths are reaching all-time highs. This just as the country was beginning to gain some hope with the vaccines coming through the system and with people being given vaccines. The UK actually doing very well compared to other countries, beaten only by Israel and Bahrain so far in the rate of its vaccination, and both those countries with tiny populations compared to the 66 million plus here in the United Kingdom. But that's not going to help anyone at the moment with this new variant strain of the virus, which is apparently easier to spread. The transmission is higher, somewhere between 50 to 70%, the Prime Minister said. And because of that, the rate has simply been going up and up. So while there is light at the end of the tunnel, the Prime Minister said, with these vaccines, and while they're going to try to do 2 million vaccines a week, now there's a second vaccine being given here as well as the original Pfizer one, people do need to stay away from each other, stay at home, he said, work from home unless they can't, and schools, most importantly, will be closing except for nursery-age children, something he said wouldn't happen only yesterday morning.
Now, you mentioned the introduction of the new vaccine, the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine here. Now, by all accounts, easier to distribute by some means here. Doesn't require the extreme cold storage, if I'm not mistaken, of the Pfizer and Moderna vaccines here. A different approach here. Is there some greater optimism now that this sort of homegrown the treatment is coming into the marketplace?
As with all things COVID in the United Kingdom, people are somewhat confused and often quite critical of the government's ability to communicate its plans. But of course, it's a fast-changing situation and the government's constantly having to revise what it's going to do. The UK started vaccinating people with the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine yesterday, and that's expected to increase the rate of vaccination. That's because the Oxford vaccine, as you say, doesn't require the deep freeze conditions needed to transport it that the Pfizer vaccine does. Instead, it can be stored like other vaccines in a regular drugs fridge, and that makes it much easier to distribute it widely. It's also much cheaper. It costs about £3 per shot. It requires 2 shots, just like the Pfizer vaccine. Even so, vaccines of any sort are going to be scarce here and everywhere. So to reach that 2 million a week target, the government's going to have to rely on a steady flow of vaccines coming to the market. And also there's some controversy over how the government has communicated its plans for the window period between the first and the second doses of both vaccines. They're planning to stretch that beyond the 3 to 4 weeks that's recommended in the trials to up to 12 weeks. They say that that will allow them to give more people one dose of the vaccine, giving them some high percentage of coverage, but not necessarily the longevity given by the second dose. And that's caused some controversy.